morning, everybody, and welcome. It's a Monday. This is SPTV Live, and we have a guest today. We have the wonderful Michel Laflèche-Francoeur. Welcome, friend. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I love the introduction for your show.
I thought you'd like that. So guys in the chat, welcome. There's quite a lot of that you hear already. Hans Christian Schwartz, how you doing? Awaken F, hi Jeff. Jeff is here. PTS for Life, a fellow Canadian. How's it going? So a little bit of news. In the last few days, a documentary was aired in Quebec in Canada, where a documentary crew went undercover for 3 months inside the Quebec Church of Scientology. And it's huge, and it kind of caught me by surprise. I wasn't expecting it. I didn't know it was going to happen. And Michel here was a big part of it. You featured in the documentary. You have a really interesting story in Scientology. So I thought, let's bring you on and learn a bit more about the process of how that documentary came about. Do you want to give us a little bit of background as to who you are first, Michel, and your story in Scientology and where you are in the world?
Yes, well, I'm in Quebec, in Canada, an hour drive from Montreal. I don't tell anybody where I am because I'm still thinking that OSA would come and attack me, but I don't think that happened. The church here in Quebec is dying. So I was introduced into Scientology when I was 11 by my father, and I joined Scientology literally. I jumped into it because already when I was 11, I was in that kind of search of senses. Sorry about my English. I will try to translate the idea. The thing is, I was born in another cult, probably one of the most misogynistic cults here in Canada. And it's called La Mission de l'Esprit Saint. I was born in that cult, and we got out of that cult when I was 5 or 6. But with both my parents into deep depression. So already when I was 8, 9, I was left by myself. I started using around 9, 10. I was sexually abused. My father was never there. I started stealing to eat when I was 10 about. So when I was introduced to Scientology, already at that young age, I was searching for some sense about, my universe was not very funny. And the proposition that Albert was giving us, I jumped into it. As soon as I got 12, I joined the Montreal staff, and I found it, I loved it at first. We found a new community because we had left the first community I was born in. There I found a new gang of people. My father was always there. He was not at home, but he was at church. So I would go to church and I'd see my father more often. I joined staff and I started all the basic courses. At 12, I joined staff, started doing body routing in Montreal when I was a kid, and that's ridiculous. And I went to Flag. I went in the Sea Org at 12. But I didn't stay very long. It didn't go very well. I stayed about 8 months. I was in Flag Crew. That was about the same time I remember seeing Leah Remini there and Sherry, who's Leah's best friend. She talks about in her book. And I stayed about 8 months because everything went well with the EPF at the beginning. And then I was posted in the galley kitchen, the big galley kitchen. And I cut my finger because I was just a kid. I didn't know. I started using a cutter for the vegetables or meat, and then I pushed the lettuce with my hand in it. Ooh. And I cut my finger.
Oh, that sounds painful.
That was terrible. They brought me to a Clearwater hospital, telling me, "Don't say a word. Don't speak. We don't want them to know." The year before I was there, around 83 or 82, they had the city council. The citizens where they had a big council against Scientology. Everybody was, many people wanted it out of town, and so it was in the air. So they told me, don't speak and say that you cut yourself with a fisherman knife. And But what happened is there was about 8 months I was at that same moment I was not receiving any money, and I couldn't buy clothes. I couldn't buy anything. I'd left Canada 8 months before with one old pair of jeans and 2 T-shirts. And when I joined Sea Org, they gave me one old pants. It was then thick woolen tissue. It was so hot in Kawat. I couldn't, and I had one pair of pants. I remember washing them at night, and they wouldn't dry because it was too humid. I had to put them on. They were still wet in the morning. And I remember entering and the back of the Fort Harrison where they have their window, the big windows, and the people go there to receive it. I went there. I was thinking, and the guy told me, "You stink. Get out of here." And he got really mad at me.
Wow.
I was alone there, all sort of situation like that. But the worst is Sarah, who was my senior, and the galley kitchen. I think she was the only person who was caring for me a little bit. She had two or three boys with her in the Sea Org, and they said that she was the SP responsible for me being PTS. So she was put in the RPF. So I'll think also many things like that happened. That so I fell in some kind of depression. Gosh. So I told them to fuck off, and I left. And there was a guy from Montreal that arrived, and the guy was not a good person. He was a fraudster. He wrote false check to Flag, and he arrived there thinking he would get high level audition with his fake checks, and they threw him out. They gave him 24 hours to leave. The guy was from Montreal, and I knew him a bit, so I left with him in the middle of the night.
Where were your parents at this point? If you're 12 years old and you've gone to Flag to join the Sea Organization, did your parents also join the Sea Org, or did they stay back in Canada? Or
no, the summer before, when I arrived in Flag, my father was with me, and he wanted to join the Sea Org, but he couldn't. They wouldn't take him because he was full of debt, and he had. And I had another sister with me, but she joined CMO. So she would live in this motel. There's a motel a few kilometers from the Fort Harrison. She lived there. She was with CMO. Me, I was with Flag Crew. I live in the Fort Harrison with 3 adult men in a room. We were 4 in a room. And my father wasn't accepted. So I hadn't heard from him, like, in the 8 months that I was at Flag. I didn't hear from my father, and neither from my mother. I was alone there, and I wouldn't see my sister. So if, in order to be able to stay there, we had to find somebody that would be my legal tutor.
Right.
So there was a woman from Montreal that arrived to Flag with us, and she accepted to sign the paper. And she had daughters with her, and these were people from Montreal I knew a little bit, so I could talk to them sometimes. But 2 or 3 weeks after they arrived, they left for LA. They left Florida. So they asked one of the American guy that was in the same room. They asked him to be my legal tutor. But I never spoke to the guy, and he said yes. But it's as if after he signed the paper to accept to be, it's like if he hated me. I think they put me as a responsibility on his back, and it got even worse. And but the sad thing is, when I blew Flag, my mother had left Canada the day before to come and join us in Flag.
To join the Sea Org, or just come and visit you?
No, I think to join the Sea Org.
Wow.
But her too, it didn't work. My parents, they were too.
Sure.
They didn't qualify for the Sea Org. She didn't stay. Maybe she stayed there 2 or 3 months. But the thing is that when I arrived in Montreal, my mother wasn't there. And my father was there, but he wasn't there. He was on drug, and he was. My father was Scientologist, but he must be one of the very few Scientologists that kept smoking grass until they really pushed him and told him, "If you don't stop now, you're gonna have to leave."
Wow.
He was
So
a taxi driver. He was always talking about Scientology. Oh, I'm a Scientologist, and smoking pot with his.
wow.
That was
So just to be clear, you have two parents and a son, and the two parents weren't qualified to join the Sea Org and work for the church, but the 12-year-old boy was allowed to go and work for the church full time. Like that, just the concept is insane that I don't want people to gloss over. A child was no problem, sign you up, come work for us, but the two responsible adults, for whatever reason, no, they can't join. Like they gave preference to a child and trafficked you, right? They moved you from one country to another to work.
Yeah, I worked there for 8 months, no pay, nothing for 8 months as a kid.
And what was your post? Did you get posted, or were you just doing what?
Yeah, I was posted in the kitchen, in the big galley.
Oh yeah, in the galley,
the
right?
staff kitchen.
Yeah.
I was posted there with a French guy whose name was Louis. He ended up chief for the Lemon Tree restaurant after a certain time. But when I arrived, I did the EPF, which I don't remember how many weeks it took me. And and then I worked a few months, mostly in the galley. It's a long time ago. I did a few things. I remember one thing is she had a lot of problem to find me a post. Nobody wanted me. She tried to put me with the CPRO team that were working on renovation. The guy asked me to go up a scale and take a bag of tools. And I went up and tried to take it, and I dropped it down the. So he says to the recruiter, "You see, we can't have him working in the renovation."
So it's not that it's unsafe for a child to work on a building site. It was that you dropped something. That was the reason that you.
And so the guy that was who she tried to put me with, he said, "No, I don't want kids here. You see, just drop the bag. He can't do that." So finally, she found a place for me and the kitchen, but I was left by myself. I went to use that electrical cutter, and thank God I just cut the tip, because when I felt the blade, I came back up, but there was blood all over the place. And Sarah was put into the RPF, and I would walk by and see her. I felt so guilty, because it's like if it was because of me. This concept of PTSD is ridiculous. See, I felt responsible for her being in the RPF. And sadly, that was one of the only person with whom I was talking. And she was not my mother, but I was a kid, and there was this still. She was caring
like a motherly
for me.
relationship,
a little bit, maybe more from my point of view than hers, but
sure. And what sort of? You said it was a long time ago. What sort of time frame were we looking at? When was it that you joined the Sea Org? And
I joined the Sea Org around 83, 84.
Okay, and then when you left the Sea Org, did you leave Scientology straight away, or did you continue as a Scientologist for a while after you left the Sea Org?
When I came back to Montreal, first I was treated as a criminal because I had during the night, I had blue flag.
Sure. And for those watching, a blowing flag, that means an unauthorized departure. You have to get permission to leave. So when you blow, that means you just leave, and you don't tell anyone. You just unauthorized, and that's a crime in Scientology that comes with punishment, right?
Yeah. So when I got to Montreal, they didn't want me at Montreal org. They sent me to Toronto to do a sec check on the computer, the emitter. When I got into Toronto, they treated me like a criminal. So I got even more mad. I thought that things could settle, and I say, okay, I want to come back to Montreal staff. As a staff, I want to stay in Montreal. I can't be alone over there. But because they treated me like a criminal, and then they didn't declare me SP as right there. But my condition was very low, and I had a freeloader debt. And what I saw in Toronto, I saw how the people live, the Sea Org members in Toronto. I said I was even worse than the place I was in Fort Harrison. I remember one day I went in a flat, and there was like 12 mattresses on the floor with the Sea Org sleeping there, and the place was filthy.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Gabriel Toth, Escaping the Cultiverse, is another Canadian former Scientologist. And when I interviewed her, she was in Vancouver, but she told me about a time she went to Toronto and described the living conditions as hell. You know, there were cockroaches and it was smelly and horrible. And those are the conditions that these SEAL members have to live in Canada. And it's the same building you're talking about in Toronto, right? It's just, it's inhumane.
Yeah, and that was terrible. So that even reinforced my idea of not being in the Sea Org. This is sure that this is not. If they said, okay, you don't want to be in the Sea Org in Florida, we'll put you in the Sea Org in Toronto, I would have said, no way, I'm not going there. But so because of that situation, I wasn't welcome in Montreal's church. And because I did not want to be in the Sea Org anymore in my life, and I was already, like as I told you, I had already used drugs before I went to Flag, and that's one of the reasons I could only be with Flag crew. I wanted to be with the CMO or but because I had already had sex. Being a Scientologist, the sex abuse I had, I considered this like having sex when I was 9, because I'm a million years Titan, you know, and so. Today it changed. One day I realized that I'd been victim of a rape as a kid, but back then I considered myself like taking responsibility for that section. So when I did my life story and Flag, I wrote, yes, I had sex and I took drug, so I could not join CMO with my sister. And I don't know why I'm telling you that, but
I think
so I was already a drug addict. So after when I got to Montreal and I couldn't go to church anymore, and my father was not there, and I started using more and more. I took LSD and I made sure it was LSD, so I would never go back in the Sea Org, because back then, if you had taken LSD, you could not join the Sea Org. And then I had sorry, you want to say something?
No, I was just going to say, this is, you know, firstly, I'm sorry that you had to go through this. This is a horrible story, but I think it really shows to people the sort of stuff that goes on in the Sea Org and Scientology and has done for a long time. And I think what you just said there about the idea of sex is it demonstrates how horrible this thing is, because you as a child, you only know what you've experienced and what you've been told. So your perception of what sex is was completely warped because of the abuse that you suffered.
It was terrible.
That's really horrible. And that's the thing, is like, as a child in Scientology, you didn't know any different. You just thought that's how it worked and what it was.
You know, they have this concept of karma and other religion. Me, I saw it like that, so I took responsibility for that. But me having sex with a man, and back then in the 80s, you know, there was a lot of homophobia, much more than today. And I'm not homosexual. Today I'm married, I have 2 kids, I love women, but I have no problem with a person that. But back then, that was another thing that I had to hide. I started living more and more in shame. So at 13, I overdosed, and the cop woke me up in the bath, and they put me into a jail for kids, delinquent.
Yeah.
First, they put me for 1 year. After 1 year, they saw that I'm not ready to go back. I can't go to my father, because when they found me overdosing, it was at my father's place. So when they did an inquiry, the policeman, and they said that this kid cannot live with his father. So I was not permitted to go with my father. My mother didn't want to take me, because what I didn't say is we were kids, 8 kids. She already had lots of kids, and I was trouble. She couldn't take me. So they left me in this place for, how do you say,
like an institution.
I stayed there until I was 18.
Wow.
And I would live at that place, often go downtown Montreal, and I was on drug. And after that, when I got out of there, I had a job, but I joined back Scientology. I stopped taking drugs. I was 21. Then I went in deeper depression, because I didn't have any more drugs to froze everything I had lived in my past. And I didn't do any therapy. So I said, okay, let's try it. Now I had found a job. I had some credit. I had some money. Okay, let's go. I'm gonna try Scientology if it works. So I went in the church at 21. I bought a package of three course we do in the academy. I think it was student at PTSSP and upper inductees. And I did these, but the first day I started studying again when I read keeping Scientology working, and they said you cannot do anything else than Scientology. I got mad. I went to see the reg and I said, "Oh, I want my money back. Sorry, I don't want to be." I saw that Albert was starting even and that to be a dictator. They were going. I had to. Oh, what? I'm gonna ask the church if I want to go back to do an NA meeting. I was an NA. This is how I stopped. Now I couldn't go to my meetings anymore. I couldn't go to another church. I couldn't go see so I went to see the register, and I asked for my money back, and she got mad at me. She says, "Oh, you can't do that." I said, "I'm gonna ask a lawyer to represent me. I'll be back." That got even worse. Then she really said, "Oh, you cannot tell us that kind of thing. You won't be able to see your father anymore." So I went home. I was mad. I went home, and the ethic officer kept calling me, and my father kept calling me, and so I went back into the ethics section, and then they got me. I said, "Okay, I'm going to do these courses." So I could manage it, and I wrote some OW, and I did my conditions. I got back into the academy, did my 3-course package. I remember I didn't have a twin to do the upper inductee, so I did the purification rundown. So I did like 4 I consider major services because I had only do the communication course before. So I stayed like 3 or 4 years, but that first the first thing that happened with the reg, and that was in my mind. My relationship with the people in the church was not great, and I had been spent for 4 years in delinquent. You don't come and try and manipulate me and tell me what to do. And I was into Scientology because I needed help because of everything that I lived before when I was a kid, and I needed help. I was in the dark, but as soon as I got into the environment of the church, I would key it out again. Because of the TRs, I would dissociate. I come in I would dissociate too. But then that was only temporary, and I came back and I wasn't happy, and I said I left 3 or 4 years after 20, so maybe I was 25. I was accepted into a music faculty. Wow. So I switched my utopian dream from becoming a Scientologist. I switched it to I wanted to become an opera singer. I was accepted in a faculty, and when I started studying music, I stopped going to church slowly. And I would tell them, "Oh, I don't have any money. I'm studying now. Maybe after I can earn a living, I come back to the church." And this is how I slowly got away from Scientology. But maybe I'd say almost a few years. So I left Scientology and I started drinking again. That's one thing I did say.
So when was the last time you finally left Scientology and you were like, "I'm done," and you didn't go back?
The very last time it was, I was 35.
Right.
I didn't go to the Montreal org for about 3 or 4 years. Sure. Then I received a call from one of my cousin's wife. She wants to meet me. So I come. I said, "Okay, I'll
try and recover you back in, right?"
But she did recover me. So I went to the church. I spoke with her, and I don't know what she pulled in my head, which sentence clicked, but she managed to have me sign another contract, but part-time, kind of contact for 15 hours a week, I think. And the day after, or 2 days after I signed this, I'm there, and I was in the central file, and there was a bunch of PC folders with red tags on it. You know what's the red tag?
Yes, yeah. When you need to go back into session because you've not. For those of you watching, if you're in an auditing session, the idea is you're meant to feel good at the end of it, and if you don't feel good, then you're red tagged, which means something's not gone right. You have to go straight back into session as soon as possible to try and fix what
That's
went wrong.
that's it. And I saw a few of these folder of people I knew 15 years before, 20 years
Sure.
before. They never came back to the church. And one of these guys, I saw his name was Christian. I won't say his name. He became schizophrenic. I saw him on the street. He became very, very sick. And that was a guy I had known when I was 13. And that was very touching for me to see this guy. And then I realized that it's Scientology put him in that state.
Yeah.
And I saw many names, and I kind of woke up. I stayed when I got back I signed that contract. I stayed about 2 days on staff.
And then you're like,
piling these. And
Yeah.
I said, no, this is not for me. And I left.
Yeah.
And then I would work Montreal downtown, and I had to take a bus to go home. I didn't drive a car back then. And everything I would pass in front of the church, every time I pass in front, I would go like that. I looked somewhere else because I post-traumatic symptoms starting.
Yeah.
It was a reflex. They had something. And then I started wondering, what is this bloody girl, what did she tell me to bring me back in the church? And I was so mad because when I left to go in my music faculty, I had managed to finish my course and blah, blah, blah. Now, again, I had a staff contract that I didn't want to continue. Already, I went for an evening on course, and they wanted to charge me the full course because I did the 3 hours of study. They wanted me to pay the student staff too. I think staff student too.
Yeah, staff.
So I was in trouble, and I said, "How the hell did they do that?" And I kind of realized that there was a part of me I was not controlling.
Yeah,
this girl controlled me, brought me back, and then that's why I guess I reacted like that every time I was in front of the bus. And at that age, at 35, by chance, I had friends in France, in south of France, Nice, and I left Canada, and I stayed. I had a visa of 1 year to go to France, and I stayed 2 years and a half. I didn't want to go back, so for 1 year and a half, I stayed there without any visa. But the first year I had a visa, I could work. And let me tell you a story. I went into the hotel where I work.
Keep talking. I just need to refresh my browser. Keep talking. I'm going to disappear and I'll come back in 2 seconds. I just need to. Something's going on with my StreamYard. Keep going.
Yeah, I found a job as a receptionist in that hotel. It was called Boscolo Park Hotel on Avenue de Verdun in Nice. And I started working there. And I'd run away from Montreal, but I didn't really know I was running away from Scientology and from my past, from my demons. And the first weekend I worked there is an event of the Psych Buster and the entrance of the hotel where I have to work. CCHR is there, and I see Scientologists coming to manage the hotel.
Just a complete fluke, as a coincidence, right?
It was a coincidence, but I don't really believe in that kind of coincidence.
Sure.
And I thought in my head, I said, life is putting me in that situation, so I have to face this fucking church. Sorry for my language. I cannot run away. I have to face it. That was in 2006. And that first night, I started going on YouTube for the first time. But before that, I had read Russell Miller's book. And that opened my eyes a lot. And one day I went to an event at the org, and I saw it was Ron's birthday. They was telling all these things about Ron. And the day before, I'd read Russell Miller's book, and I saw that was complete bullshit what they were saying. But anyway, I started going on YouTube. I saw a video of there were 6 OT, and they say as the more I got up the bridge, the worse I got, the worse my case got, and the more sick I. And I saw another video about, I don't know the woman's name. She was saying that they gave us a CD to put in our computer, and that CD would put some kind of firewall, and we couldn't go on the Tampa Journal. I saw her declaring that. I searched for the video and the days after and never found it again. But that night I heard, And I started understanding what kind of thing was really Scientology. And then I realized that's a very dangerous cult. They are organized, and then I remember what I had lived as a kid, and this is when I became more of a militant. I said I have to face that, and I'm not going to live in fear and shame all my life. And me and my journey today, I also denounced the first cult I was born in, which is called La Mission de l'Esprit Saint. This makes a lot of victims too here in Quebec. Mostly, it's mostly in Quebec. And my page is called The Sect en Sect because it means from cult to cult. Because after I left Scientology, when I came back to Canada, after being in France,
just so everyone watching, this is Michel's YouTube page, De Sect en Sect. So go and give him a subscribe if you're watching this.
Yeah, I don't have
a link in the
subscriber.
description as well. And you've got you're posting quite regularly. You know, you've got 11 days ago, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So
this I did
subscribe.
That's the kind of podcast I did for 4 months. Every week there's 15-20 minutes, and I'm talking not only about Scientology, I'm talking about why do people join cults, and what happened to my father when he left the first cult. He was attracted. Why was he attracted to Scientology? You know, he managed to leave a first cult, but he ended up in another one that's even worse or as bad as. And I reproduced the same thing. Me, when I left Scientology, I got back to Canada around 38. I went into some. I don't want to say that it's a cult, but I got in major problems in an evangelical church, and also because I was not well.
And also, one of the tools that these groups use is, you know, preying on vulnerable people. If you look at your life, you were a child, you'd gone through trauma, and then when you rejoined later on, again, you were going through, you know, a rough patch in your life. Scientology and, you know, coercive groups and cults, they look for people who are in a vulnerable point in their life, and that's the perfect time to recruit someone, right?
Yeah, but you know, it goes even farther than that. When I got into that fight in the evangelical church, I was around 45. I was rejected from the church because I didn't agree with what was happening with the new preacher and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I got very mentally fragile.
Yeah.
For days, I wouldn't sleep. And while I was doing insomnia in my bed, I had sentences from my past because I was asking myself, why do I go back in these church all the time? Why did I go back there? What does pull me in there? So everything would come back in the middle of the night during my insomnia. And I had these sentences I remembered the credo of Scientology. When as a kid, I first entered the church and I read the people are spiritual beings, and the only thing that can cure a person is the spirituality, is religion. And me, I was sick because of my past. I had never had therapy. I wasn't well. I was just looking for another way to dissociate.
You were vulnerable. Yeah, exactly.
And I would search in churches. There I had my first answer. What was putting me into marginal groups? Because I had been trained like that. When I was a kid, they told me that
they offered answers, right? When you're looking for answers and meaning in life, right?
Yeah, no, but it's farther than that. I had beliefs that had been
ingrained in you, right, from a very young age.
And the first cult, the mission of the Holy Spirit I was born in, they told us that society were all Satan's child. It was Satan's world, and the only safe place was the first cult I was born in. So that's why when my father left that church, he found for another safe harbor. He found Scientology.
That's something that we see a lot of.
That's a pattern.
Yeah,
it's a pattern. And I was in the same pattern. And me too. I was bringing my son into that evangelical church, and I kind of woke up at 45. So it goes far beyond this Scientology thing, you know.
Exactly.
Scientology is bad, but we're gonna close every Scientology church tomorrow, and some people will open something worse on another name, and we'll use Albert's technology, and we'll mix that with the Bible, and we'll go and prey on the other victims. So it's more bigger than just Scientology or these.
I think that's why education is so important, right? There's Scientology is obviously what it is, and it's really important to try and tackle the Scientology, but also in the process educating people on how these groups work, because it's the same
That's
tools, the
it.
same techniques, and with greater knowledge, people can protect themselves from, you know, these sorts of groups, whether it's Scientology or not. And I think, you know, bringing it towards the documentary, which is, you know, it came out the other day, it's fantastic. I think it's a good segue because you've managed to turn this life of turmoil and trauma and, you know, all of these horrible things you just described, and this troubled upbringing and so on, you've managed to kind of turn it into a positive because you're focusing on, you know, trying to tackle these groups, trying to take down Scientology. And
Yes.
I think I just want to firstly recognize that, make sure that you don't lose sight of the fact that, you know, you're focusing on that now, and that's more helpful than anyone who would ever be in Scientology, because you're helping, right? So let's talk about the documentary.
Yeah, it's just the right time. I was gonna in my head, I was gonna do a switch to it.
Yeah,
you know,
so,
because like this purification, the documentary is about the purification. Somebody bipolar.
Let me just bring this up a second. So for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, there's a link in the description. The documentary is Enquête, Le Remède de la Scientologie. It's in French, obviously, but if you go on YouTube, you can go subtitles, and you can choose, if you speak English, you can do an auto translation. It's not the best, but you get enough of a gist to figure out what's going on. I won't play the whole thing, but let's just watch the first few seconds so you can see what we're talking about here.
Est-ce que tu es déprimé?
Il y a certains moments, oui. Oui.
Le psychiatre, pour moi, c'est fini. C'est banni.
Représentes-tu une tentative d'investiguer la Scientologie? Non. Damien?
Oui, on a infiltré l'église de Scientologie.
So just because I don't want to end up watching the whole thing here. So essentially you can see here that this documentary crew went undercover into the Church of Scientology in Quebec for 3 months. We haven't seen an infiltration like this in a very long time. So it's fantastic. And they had hidden cameras and so on. And essentially it follows the story of somebody who sent in it goes on the purification rundown and has bipolar and is taking these medications, and it's following this story of how Scientology tell this guy to stop taking his meds and instead to take vitamins and do the purif to try and rid his body of the toxins. And it's a really fascinating story. There's one point where he's sent to literally a mechanic in some garage, you know, in some back streets of Quebec. And that's the guy that is prescribing the vitamins for the program. And this documentary, it's a really good indicator of how Scientology are currently operating in Quebec, in Canada. And it features you, that, you know, you give some commentary and you're interviewed. What was that process like for you, Michelle, being a part of this? You know, did they approach you? You know, what did you find out about it? How did it all start from your perspective?
Okay, first I want to say something. This documentary was shown on CBC, French CBC, so it's a major channel. It's not some little. And the journalist has been investigating Scientology for 13 years.
Wow.
His name is Gaetan Pouliot. It's not the first paper. He wrote paper. And the director is Sophie Lambert. She's also a very well-known director of documentary. So I was impressed when I saw it. I said, wow, it's great what they did. But how did Gaetan got to me is 6 or 7 years ago, I went into another major TV channel to do a 20-minute interview with the guys Denis Lévesque, and it's on TVA. So that's how Gaetan contacted me a few weeks after. And we started collaborating because Gaetan knows a lot of people in Quebec, but I don't know who he knows, because he's a very serious journalist and He never told me his source, or I think he knows that me as a ex-Scientologist, if today I want to go back in Scientology, I'm gonna have to give a good kick to the people I pretended to be part of, and then I could attack Gaetan and all these sources. So the guy is very serious journalist, and this is how I was introduced with him. I met him a few times. He's a very nice person. And he did that because of curiosity. He was born near a Quebec church, and that's what he told me. He started a journalist I think he was at school as a journalist, and he did his first thing about Scientology, and then he came back a few years. He did many inquiries, so he knows a lot about it.
I think what's so good about this documentary that I really don't want people to overlook this, because it's huge, because it just shows it's not just them going undercover to film something and tell a story. They are serious journalists that want to play a part in bringing this thing, holding people accountable for what is happening in Scientology, because they're not just, you told me the other day, they're not just filming this and documenting it. They're trying to instigate change and actually have some action off the back of it, right? So can you tell us a bit about that?
Since a few years, I'd say, first, when I went to Denis Lévesque, we were many expert people that were born in Jehovah's Witness, Scientology, a Mission of the Holy Spirit, mostly Jehovah's Witness. We went and asked a parliamentary inquiry on cults in Quebec. We did a big petition. That's how I was invited in television.
When was this? What sort of year, roughly?
That was in 2017.
Okay, right.
And since that day, I don't know. Me, it's personal. I don't say it's a big society change, but in the last few years, also Quebec became a laic country. It means we took out religion from the schools.
Right.
Not enough to my taste, but we were very Catholic here. But now there's no more Catholicism in schools. There's no more Catholicism in the parliamentary where the deputy are. So there is like a change into the society, and Enquête is a very serious program. So they needed laws to represent what they want to show on television. They used the laws about medical. Medical advice from the church. They told the guy to stop taking pills, but the society at large, it's much larger, the problem, and many journalists are working on it. And like we saw, I told you on the phone, Adil Sharkawi went 3 or 4 weeks ago in the street. There was a manifestation of Palestinians support and he used the Quran, text from the Quran, to ask God and to tell to the population that the people in the manifest that every Israeli should be exterminated. He used phrases from the Quran, and after, when journalists confronted him with that, he says, "Oh, I was only praying, using my book and praying
for religious freedom, right?"
Yeah. But then there is a deputy or two and the House of Commons here in Quebec that want to put a law where you cannot use your religion and to hide anymore behind your religion to say anything you want. And that's
the sort of law that we need, I think, to tackle particularly Scientology, because in the US, for example, they get away with so much because they go, "Oh, we're a religion, we have freedom of belief."
The Second Amendment, I think, or the First Amendment,
so that's how they get away with it. So a law like this is crucial, because
that's why
it shows that they can't hide behind religious belief. It doesn't stop people from believing what they want. It doesn't stifle freedom of belief, but it does stop people from using that as an excuse, right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And in France, they have it's called the Mivilude. They have people. They have a police force that goes into churches or into people call themselves life coach or churches or life improvement businesses, and they have how do you say, enquêteurs, people that investigators.
Yeah, exactly.
So I wanted that to come here in Quebec. That's what I want. I wanted to suggest when we asked to have a parliamentary investigation, to put some kind of give us something to act.
Yeah.
And it's funny because at the end of the documentary, the church says, the journalist says, we asked the church to tell them, and they respond. They said it's disgusting to attack our religious belief with stories like that. It's always because we have the same problem in Canada. It's called la Charte canadienne des droits et libertés. People hide behind that. You can practice. You just have to say it's your religion, and then you can do anything you want, and you can say anything you want.
I think that's what's good about this documentary, because it pins Scientology down on giving medical advice, right? Which doesn't sound massively exciting when you say it like that, but when you think about it, it's actions like this that start to restrict Scientology and get people to pay closer attention to what it's doing, because it is giving medical advice, and that is illegal. That's nothing to do with religious belief. That is, giving medical advice, which you're not allowed to do without being a trained medical professional.
But
and
then
it's little things like this that build up over time with lots of other things that ultimately mean the church has to be accountable for its actions.
But they also in the documentary they also spoke about Tom Cruise and John Travolta and France d'Amour, which is a French Canadian singer that is Scientologist and promote openly Scientology, and they showed how ridiculous they are. They all repeat the same thing against psychiatry. So they showed also it's over that medical advice. They showed that Scientology wants to replace psychiatry, and that how strongly Scientology is against everything that's started by psychology, psychotherapy, psychiatry. And the guy says the guy that sells the vitamin, he says, bipolar is an invention from the psychiatre, because they fabricate medication to make money with big company. So it goes farther than just this medical. It shows more to the people what is Scientology and how dangerous it is, because they would like to replace psychiatry. But people that goes in Scientology that I've known, many of them got much worse. They got mentally sick because of Scientology. And I would have liked to go farther with the documentary. What is that bloody purification rundown? What is that? Why does Abart does that? It's just another. It's a sweating lodge.
Yeah, I think,
and that's something you see in many cults. Sweating. I wanted to go farther than just the medical point.
Well, I think you can see from what you've done already, going to the government in Quebec to petition and get affecting change in the law, and this documentary and the other documentary did this. It's huge, and it's all steps in the right direction. And I think this is a good first step, or not even first, but a significant step in, bringing the government officials and people who need to know about it, bringing it to their attention and saying, hey guys, this is going on. This is just one problem out of many. And hopefully this is the catalyst, the start of a larger investigation, I would hope. Michelle, there's a bunch of questions that I want to run through, because I know we're running up on an hour. And firstly, I would definitely love to have you back for a part 2, because I think we've only just scratched the surface and this is fascinating. If you'd be up for that at some point.
Of course.
Awesome.
I'm up. I'm telling to everybody listening, I will find time to go and talk to anybody who wants to talk to me.
Absolutely.
When I joined Scientology, they told me, we have to save the planet. Come in with us and save the planet.
And now you're saving the planet from them, right?
Well, that's it. Yeah. I always wanted to do something to better my environment and better the society.
Yeah. Well, let's go through some of these. So, Roxy, that's so messed up. You are completely correct. It is messed up. Educon here. I don't know how Michelle got through all of this. A total soldier from a CSA survivor. There's a lot of support for you here, Michelle. You've shown so much bravery and strength and courage, not only to go through what you went through, but then also to start tackling the church and fighting it, but also to speak out so publicly in this documentary on this channel. It shows an immense amount of bravery and courage on your part. So don't overlook that, my friend.
Please.
Catherine Olson, your name looks really familiar. Do you have any family in the Sea Org?
Do
you have any current family
I
members?
think I don't have anymore, but I have people. I have two uncles that are presently, I think, in St. Hill studying.
Right.
And I have people here on the channel. I saw one of my cousins.
I was going to say, we've got Richard Francoeur and we have Eugenie Francoeur. They're your family members.
They're my cousin, and they were also born in the mission of the Holy Spirit, and they all had a hard time like me.
Yeah, absolutely. Hans Christian Schwartz, yeah, just a normal day in Scientology. See, this is one of the key things, is like, this is a horrible story that, you know, we've only just scratched the surface. There's more to tell, obviously, but, you know, this is one example of a global, systematic, huge problem. This is how Scientology operates in every city, in every country in which it operates, right? This is not just a one-off thing. This is another story of Scientology's horrific abuses and crimes. And I'm not saying that to lessen your experience in any way, shape, or form. I'm just saying that there are lots of stories that are horrific. And
many kids had it much harder than me and the Sea Org. Many kids there didn't see their parents. They saw their parents 2-3 times a year. They were raised by other teenage, or it's terrible. It's me.
Yeah, and this is why, you know, it needs people like yourself to stand up and say, hey, I went through this and it's not okay. Let's put a stop to it. So, you know, massive testament to you, my friend. Pamela Crawford, it's so sad to hear his story of what happened to you, Michelle. Sending you love and hugs.
Oh, please don't worry. You know, today I'm married. I have 2 wonderful kids, and I have a great career, and I think it's okay. You know, much people have it hard too. It's just that one day I wanted to better myself, and when I had my first son, I realized I needed to change. I needed to because I couldn't have when I had my 1-year-old kid who wanted a hug from me, and I realized that my father never hugged me as he was so sick, and you know, I went into and I changed it. But many people have it hard. They just don't talk about it. And I knew that if I wanted to cure myself, I needed to talk openly, stop living in fear and shame, and try. It gives some sense to my story to come and talk about it today.
And it helps other people, because you never know who's watching this, who maybe don't know you or whatever, but they've had a similar experience and they're in a different country and they hear your story and they go, oh my God, that happened to me, or something similar happened, or I understand that because of this. You know, hearing people talk about their own stories, people relate to it, and that helps them in their recovery as well. So it's helpful for you, of course, but don't forget, it's also helpful to other people.
Well,
right?
Let's say I'm now the hero I wanted to be.
Well, you are now, exactly.
No.
Educon, again, it is brilliant. Journalists kept going, really good work. Yeah, I think journalism is so important, particularly on this topic, because journalists exist to hold people to account, to tell stories, and to put people, you know, put stories in the public eye and hold people accountable for what they've done. And I think it's really important to just note that journalists have played and will continue to play a vital part in this fight, and in exposing these things. And a lot of journalists are scared to take on Scientology because they are known for harassment and intimidation and so on. But you know, a real journalist, a good journalist, is someone that doesn't back down and goes, no, something is happening here that shouldn't be happening, and I'm going to report on it. You know, that takes a lot of courage. And any journalist that does a bold documentary like this, massive respect for me. And, you know, thanks to those journalists. And please, more of them come out, right, and help us in this.
That's why I insisted to talk about Gaetan a little bit. You know, Gaetan is behind that, and we need people like him.
Yeah, for sure. And last one here, GQ, is Scientology a recognized church with tax exempt status in Canada? What can you tell us about how they're considered there?
They're not recognized as a religion here. And I don't know they don't have any tax exempt. No, they're not.
Sure.
We are separated from the States, even though we're at the same border. the mentality about Scientology here and in the States is very different. And I think that when I was in Scientology in '93, and we all thought it would come fast here, it would become. But I was surprised it became recognized in Australia.
Yeah.
That way, I was very surprised because no, it's not here, and from what I know, it's not in Great Britain either.
It's a thin line in the UK. They have some recognition in some parts, but not in others. So they like to tread the line and play around with the legal loopholes to get recognition in any way that they can. And it's persistence. They have been doing this for decades and will continue doing it, and try and get away with anything they can and try and grind people down so they finally give in and go, okay, whatever, tax exemption, just have it, stop bugging us. So we need to try and stop that from happening, right? Anne Taylor here. How can we see the recent documentary as subtitles? There is a link in the description, and you can go subtitles and choose the language and it'll auto translate for you. So look, as we wrap up here, Michelle, is there anything that you want to add or say before we go? We'll definitely do a part 2, but anything you want to, any final parting comments from you?
No, I just want to thank you to be there. I tried to do something. I wrote a book and to tell my story.
I was going to bring this up. So
because when
in the house, this is Michelle's book. It's on Amazon.
Yeah, that's the. Can you go on the paper?
Yeah.
The brochure. Yeah, that's the better book. The other one is the Kindle. And it have a few mistakes. I did everything myself. I wish I had more help, but I wanted to put that out, especially because when I wrote Russell Miller, when I read it, I found it in a public library. It opened my eyes, and it helped me so much when I could read books about. Then that's why I wanted to write my story. And because I want to go farther than just Scientology, I'm talking about dissociation in the book and what happens when you do the purification rundown, and I'm exposing other methods about the TRs. I'm talking about the TRs, what happens when you can't stand like that, and how it works. And they use that in many cults, the procedure to put people into dissociative state. And I do parallel with my story that when I was raped and as a kid, I dissociated. I got out of my body. It's called depersonalization, and the psychological term. And I connected. I've been searching to find that state all my life with drugs, alcohol, and after with religion. And that's not a reason. I was always looking for some religion that could put me in that state again, because it's great, to be dissociated, but it's so bad for one's life.
It's bad for you, exactly.
We are not that kind of spiritual beings that can live separated from their body and from their emotions. And I talk about the tone scale, how it's screwed up. You always have to stay above 2.0, and everything that is under it, you cannot talk. So I couldn't talk about being a victim, about my sexual abuse, about everything. And it's all below the tone scale. It's all in, and that destroys a society when you cannot talk about the painful moment. All the rest is bullshit, because you cannot talk about the real things.
You need to confront those emotions and feel them in Scientology, and cults.
This is
down so much.
So my book is all about that. It's not only about exposing Scientology. It's more
about how it works. Well,
the whole procedure.
You mentioned there that you did your book on your own and you needed more help, and you've said that a couple of times that you need help with this and that, and I very much get the sense that you have been fighting pretty much on your own or with a very little support for a very long time. And I want to just, in my final parting comments, say that I'm so glad you reached out, because this community is so welcoming and helpful and encouraging. You've found me, you've got me. I can help you in any way that I can. The guys in the chat are always happy to help, and we are stronger together. And I just want to say that you don't have to fight on your own anymore, right? You've done amazing stuff and you will continue to do so, but we're all
one last thing together. I want to say, I want to say one thing. Some people did help me, like Richer, who's in the chat. He gave me $50 to help me to pay the corrector because my French was not great. I needed help to do the correction. I think it got corrected 3 or 4 times, and so I want to thank Richer again. Some people did help me, but
I mean, you're very much taking
it was a major project.
Yeah, and you're taking a stand on your own, in French-speaking Canada, and you're kind of, there's obviously other Canadians speaking out like Jeff and Gabriel, but you've been doing this for a long time and very much off your own back. So you're not alone anymore. You've got us, and guys watching this, go and for the love of God, show Michel some SPTV love. Please go and subscribe to his channel. Even if you don't speak French, I'm subscribed. There's subtitles. Just show him the support that he needs. And, we are a community united behind you, Michel. So everyone go and subscribe. There's a link in the description. Look, thank you so much for this, Michel. I think that you have done amazing work, and you will continue to do so. You have inspired me, certainly in this conversation, of how you've gone through such a horrific journey and managed to come out the other end still with the willingness to live and to fight and to show people the truth about these groups and help others in the process. I think it's inspiring. So thank you. And if you'd be up for it, I'd love to do a part 2 in the coming days. That would be great. Yeah.
Anytime. You'll have to find some more questions.
I have to find so many questions, Michel.
Right.
We just touched the tip of the iceberg. But guys, thank you so much for joining us.
You say that in English, it's heartwarming.
Heartwarming, yes, exactly.
It's very heartwarming. I want to thank you for what you're telling me. And, we have to stop going into new churches to find community and stick together. And we're starting a group here in Quebec of people coming out from different cults and churches. And we stick together, and we created a group on Facebook, and I'm trying to put on a Christmas party so people that just got out of their community can come and have a Christmas party with their kids. And
that's amazing.
That's another big thing, another big project.
Michel, what a legend you are, man. I think that this can't be this can't be understated. Like you're Matt, I'm speechless, man. This is you're great. Keep it up, and
thank you.
I look
Alex.
forward to doing part 2, and thank you guys for tuning in. Michel, stay where you are, and we'll do a little debrief in a second. But thank you so much for joining us, guys, and keep your eyes on my channel and Michel's channel for part 2. Give it a like, a comment, subscribe, all of that sort of stuff. It helps push it out to more people, and we'll see you guys on the next one.